Begin. The sun beat down on Jed's wagon yard, baking the dust until it shimmered. Jed, a man whose hands were as gnarled as the old oak posts holding up his shed, wiped a smear of grease from his brow with the back of a calloused hand. His home was a symphony of frontier sounds. The wind whistled through gaps in the wooden fence, sounding like a mournful song. Inside the shed, the faint smell of hot metal from yesterday's work still hung in the air, mixing with the sweet scent of sawdust and the sharp tang of axle grease. Jed wasn't just a man. He was the master of wood and iron in this corner of the wildlands. His eyes, though framed by a network of wrinkles, missed nothing. He could tell a good piece of timber just by tapping it, and he knew the groan of a weak axle before it even broke. Around him, half-finished wagon wheels leaned against the walls, their spokes waiting for final shaping. Old tools, worn smooth by years of use, lay scattered on his workbench. Beyond the yard, the wild called out. A hawk screamed high above, and the distant rumble of thunder promised a storm that might or might not arrive. Jed just listened, content in his quiet world of craftsmanship, waiting for the next wagon to roll in, bringing with it a new challenge for his skilled hands. End. Begin. Just as Jed was about to close up for the evening, a faint creaking grew louder, then a lopsided rumble. A Conestoga wagon, listing badly to one side like a tired old dog, limped into the yard. Its massive wheels, usually sturdy, looked like they'd fought a losing battle with a rock slide. One of the rear wheels was tilted inward, its axle clearly snapped. Dust billowed around it, thick as smoke. From the driver's seat, a woman climbed down. Her face was smudged with dirt, and her clothes were worn, but her eyes, wide with worry, held a fierce spark. "Are you Jed, the wheelwright?" she asked, her voice raspy. Jed nodded, his gaze already fixed on the broken axle. "My name's Sarah," she continued, her words tumbling out quickly. "I'm from Harmony Creek. We're in terrible trouble. There's been unrest. We're cut off. No supplies are getting through. This wagon is our last hope. It's filled with food and medicine, but we broke down miles back." She wrung her hands, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The people back home are waiting. They're hungry, and some are sick. This wagon has to get there. It just has to." Jed looked from the broken wagon to Sarah's desperate face, the weight of her words settling heavily in the dusty quiet. "End. Begin." Jed knelt, his eyes scanning the broken wheel. He ran his calloused fingers over the splintered wood and twisted metal. "Conestoga wagon," he mumbled, mostly to himself. "Big, heavy, needs a special kind of strength." The axle was more than just broken. It was shattered, a clean snap that spoke of immense force. He pushed on the remaining wheel, testing its balance. The wagon groaned, settling further into the dust. He stood up, shaking his head. "I don't have a spare for this one, Sarah," he said, his voice quiet. "This isn't just any wheel. It's bigger, built to carry loads across mountains and deserts. The hub, the spokes, the rim, they all need to be just right." Sarah's face fell, a shadow of despair crossing her features. "But you can fix it, can't you, Jed?" she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Jed walked over to his stacks of seasoned wood, then to his racks of iron. He ran his hand over a thick plank of oak, then picked up a heavy iron bar. He didn't have the exact parts, but he had the raw materials and, more importantly, the knowledge. A slow nod spread across his face. I can fix it," he finally said, his gaze firm. "But I'll have to build it from scratch. Every spoke, every piece of the rim, every bit of the hub. It'll take time, and it'll take work, but it'll be a wheel that can carry your hope." End. Begin. Jed didn't waste a moment. With a purposeful stride, he walked to the heart of his workshop, the forge. He stoked the coals, breathing life into the slumbering fire. Soon, a soft hiss turned into a roar, and the air around it shimmered with heat. The smell of burning wood, sharp and resinous, filled the shed, quickly joined by the acrid scent of hot iron as Jed plunged a thick bar of metal into the fiery maw. He worked with a quiet focus, his movements efficient and practiced. The rhythmic clank-clank-clang of his hammer, striking hot metal, filled the yard, echoing off the wooden walls. Sparks flew like tiny, angry stars as he pounded the iron, shaping it with powerful, deliberate blows. He was making the hub, the very core of the new wheel, and it had to be perfect, strong enough to bear the weight of hope and supplies. Each strike was a conversation between man and metal, a shaping of raw strength into something precise and useful. The heat radiated from the forge, making the air thick and heavy, but Jed seemed to thrive in it, sweat beading on his brow but his eyes sharp and clear. He twisted the glowing iron with tongs, then plunged it back into the coals, the fire briefly flaring in protest. It was a dance of power and patience, a silent promise being forged in fire and steel. And begin. The sun rose and fell, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples, but Jed hardly noticed. He worked through the days and into the nights, his only companions the flickering lamplight and the constant, reassuring rhythm of his labor. His hands, though aged, moved with the precision of a young man, strong and unwavering as he sawed, planed, and hammered. The metal hub, once a rough bar of iron, now took its rounded form, cool and solid. Next came the spokes, each one carefully measured, cut, and angled to fit just so into the hub. He selected the strongest oak, listening to its grain, remembering lessons learned from his own father about how it breathes and settles. Sometimes he'd pause, his eyes closed, visualizing the finished wheel, every piece fitting together like a complex puzzle. He remembered old tricks passed down through generations of wheelwrights, a specific way to char the ends of the spokes for a tighter fit, a secret blend of wax and pitch for waterproofing the joints. Every detail mattered, every measurement had to be exact. He knew this wheel wasn't just a part of a wagon. It was a lifeline, and its strength would carry the hopes of a whole settlement. The quiet heroism of his craft was in every precise cut, every powerful blow, every bit of wisdom poured into the creation. And begin. Finally, after days of tireless effort, the wheel stood complete. It was a masterpiece of frontier craftsmanship. The iron hub gleamed dully, its sturdy form promising strength. The oak spokes, each one hand-fitted, fanned out gracefully, supporting the wide, iron-rimmed felloes. It wasn't just a wheel. It was a testament to Jed's skill, a blend of wood and metal forged with purpose. He ran his hand over its smooth surface, a rare smile touching his lips. With Sarah watching, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and renewed hope, Jed began the careful process of fitting the new wheel to the wagon. He eased the massive structure upright with a block and tackle, then with slow, steady movements, guided the heavy wheel onto the axle. It slid into place with a satisfying thud, a perfect fit. He then grabbed a pot of thick, dark axle grease, its familiar, slightly smoky scent filling the air. He worked the grease generously into the axle and the hub, ensuring every moving part was coated. With a grunt, he gave the wheel a spin. It turned smoothly, silently, a quiet hum of readiness. No squeaks, no wobbles, just the quiet promise of movement. Sarah let out a soft sigh of relief, a sound that spoke volumes of the burden lifted from her shoulders. The wagon, once broken and forlorn, now stood tall and ready, its new wheel gleaming under the afternoon sun. And begin. Sarah stared at the mended wagon, her face glowing with a mixture of wonder and profound relief. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to Jed. I don't know how to thank you, Jed, she stammered, her voice thick with emotion. It's more beautiful than I imagined. You've saved us. She reached out, clasping his rough hand in hers, a gesture of deep gratitude. Jed simply nodded, his gaze sweeping over the loaded wagon. He saw more than just boxes and barrels. He saw the desperate faces Sarah had described, the sick, the hungry. He felt the weight of their need, a burden almost as heavy as the wagon's cargo. He knew the road to Harmony Creek was dangerous, fraught with peril and uncertainty. Sending Sarah off alone with such a vital delivery felt wrong, a risk too great to take. His hands had built the wheel, but his heart now felt a deeper call. He looked at Sarah, then back at the wagon. "Sarah," he said, his voice firm, "I'm coming with you." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "But, Jed, your shop," he waved a dismissive hand. "This wagon needs to get there. It's my wheel, and I'll see it through. Besides," he added, a rare twinkle in his eye, "who else is going to make sure that axle stays greased?" His decision was made, driven by a quiet sense of duty. He would pilot the repaired convoy, ensuring the supplies reached their destination. And begin. The first rays of dawn painted the eastern sky as Jed and Sarah set out. Jed, perched on the driver's seat, reins firm in his hands, cast one last glance at his quiet wagon yard before turning his full attention to the road ahead. The heavy wagon lurched forward, pulled by two sturdy mules. The journey had begun. The road was less a road and more a suggestion, a faint track winding through the rugged frontier. It was a path of rattling washboards and sudden dips, of loose rocks and patches of thick mud. Each bump sent a jolt through the wagon, and Jed listened intently, his ears tuned to every creak and groan. The familiar sounds of wood against metal, the gentle sway of the springs, all told him the wagon was holding. Most importantly, the new wheel, his wheel, spun true. It didn't squeal or groan. Instead, it produced a low, steady hum, a quiet song of strength. This hum was a comfort in the vast silence of the wilderness, a testament to its perfect balance and Jed's careful greasing. Sarah, sitting beside him, looked less worried than before, her eyes fixed on the horizon, perhaps imagining the faces of her people. Jed drove on, his gaze steady, the new wheel turning tirelessly beneath them, carrying not just supplies, but hope across the unforgiving land. And begin. The journey was far from easy. One afternoon, the sky turned a bruised purple, and a sudden, fierce storm swept across the plains. Rain lashed down, turning the dusty track into a treacherous, muddy river. The mules balked, and the wagon slipped and slid. Jed, however, remained calm. He knew these skies. He steered the team with practiced ease, finding the highest ground and waiting out the worst of the deluge, sheltering Sarah under a thick canvas. Further on, they came to a ravine where the old wooden bridge lay shattered, splintered planks floating in the swollen creek below. It was a common trap for unwary travelers. Jed surveyed the scene. Then, with Sarah's help, he found a shallower crossing downstream, guiding the mules carefully across the rocky bottom. His eyes constantly scanned the horizon, not just for nature's challenges, but for human ones. The frontier was known for its shadows, for figures who preferred to take rather than earn. Every snapped twig, every rustle in the brush, put Jed on alert. His hand often rested near the worn grip of the rifle tucked beside him on the driver's bench. He chose their campsites with care, always near a water source but hidden from easy view, his frontier smarts a silent shield protecting their vital cargo and Sarah. And begin. The night was thick with shadows, the only light coming from their small, carefully banked campfire. Sarah slept fitfully, but Jed remained awake, his senses sharp. He'd chosen a hidden spot, nestled among some boulders, but the wilderness held secrets. Suddenly, a twig snapped in the darkness, too loud, too deliberate to be an animal. Jed froze, his hand already reaching for the rifle he kept close. Another sound followed, a faint rustle, then a low whisper carried on the night wind. Not an animal, human. Jed's heart beat a steady rhythm, but his movements were quiet as he roused Sarah with a gentle touch. Her eyes, wide with fear, met his. He simply put a finger to his lips, then pointed towards the shadows. Sarah nodded, understanding. Jed took up his position behind a large rock, his old rifle resting firmly in his hands. The metal felt cool and familiar against his cheek. Every nerve was alive, listening, waiting. The air crackled with unspoken tension. He couldn't see them, but he knew they were out there, circling like wolves. He held his breath, ready for anything. The night stretched on, long and tense. No shots were fired, No attack came. But the threat was real, a heavy weight in the silence. As the first hint of dawn lightened the sky, the unseen presence seemed to melt away. They had made it through the night, but the quiet heroism of Jed's watch was a silent promise to protect the wagon at all costs. Begin. After what felt like an endless journey, the wagon crested a final rise. Below them, nestled in a small valley, lay Harmony Creek. It was a quiet place, almost too quiet. No smoke rose from chimneys, and the usual sounds of children playing or blacksmiths working were absent. The settlement looked still, as if holding its breath. Jed's grip tightened on the reins. As they drew closer, a few figures emerged from the cabins, drawn by the rumble of the wagon. First one, then two, then a small group. Their faces were gaunt, their clothes patched, but as they recognized Sarah, a ripple of movement, a flicker of something, passed through them. It wasn't a cheer, not yet, but a silent, profound gasp of relief. Hope. Jed saw it in their eyes. Sarah waved, a tired but triumphant gesture. The wagon, with its new, perfectly turning wheel, rolled slowly into the heart of the settlement. The silence was broken by the creak of the wagon's axles and the soft thud of the mule's hooves. Jed looked at the faces now gathering around them. They were wary, weary, but in their gaze he saw a spark ignite. The presence of the wagon, full of life-saving supplies, was a beacon in their darkest hour. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but in that quiet gathering, Jed felt the true weight of his journey and the quiet power of his craft. Begin. The quiet relief of the Harmony Creek residents quickly turned into a flurry of activity. Strong hands, though thin from hardship, began to unload the wagon with a surprising speed. Sacks of flour, barrels of salted meat, and crates of preserved vegetables were carefully carried into the small, communal storehouse. Each item was met with hushed murmurs of gratitude, a palpable sense of hunger being appeased. Then came the medicine chests. When a young woman carefully opened one, revealing bottles of tinctures, rolls of bandages, and packets of powders, a collective gasp went through the crowd. A thin, elderly man, his cough rattling in his chest, reached out a trembling hand, tears silently tracing paths down his dusty cheeks. Children, too weak to play, brightened at the sight of dried fruit and hardtack. Jed watched the scene unfold, standing quietly beside the wagon. He saw Sarah directing the unloading, her voice regaining its strength as she distributed items. The people of Harmony Creek moved with a renewed purpose, their faces lighting up with genuine smiles that reached their weary eyes. The relief was almost a physical presence in the air, a warmth spreading through the chilled settlement. The wagon, once a symbol of their despair, was now a vessel of life, and the sight of its contents brought a wave of happiness that washed over the entire community, a testament to the power of a mended wheel and a journey bravely undertaken. Begin. Jed watched the flurry of activity, a quiet warmth spreading through him. He didn't need loud thanks or grand gestures. The sight of healthy food being shared, the murmurs of relief over medicine, and the children's eager faces were reward enough. He felt a deep, unspoken pride in his craft, knowing that his hands, his skill, and the wheel he had forged had played a part in pulling this community back from the brink. It was a different kind of heroism than the gunfights and daring rescues told in dime novels, but no less vital. He didn't rush to leave. Instead, Jed found himself staying a while in Harmony Creek. There was always something to mend, a loose hinge on a cabin door, a broken plowshare, even a child's toy cart. He moved about the settlement, his tools always at hand, offering his knowledge freely. He showed a young man how to properly sharpen an axe, helped another fix a leaky bucket, and patiently explained the best way to brace a fence post against the harsh prairie winds. He wasn't just a wheelwright. He was a man of practical wisdom, and the people, in turn, offered him simple meals and genuine camaraderie. In their quiet acceptance, Jed found a different kind of satisfaction, a feeling of belonging he hadn't realized he'd missed. Begin. Days turned into weeks, and Harmony Creek slowly began to hum with life again. With bellies full and spirits lifted, the people worked to rebuild, to fortify, to hope. Jed had seen enough to know they were on the path to recovery. His work here was done. He packed his few belongings into the now empty wagon, which felt lighter in more ways than one. As he prepared to leave, the entire settlement gathered. Not just Sarah, but the elders, the families, even the children he had seen grow stronger and livelier since the wagon arrived. They formed a quiet line, each person stepping forward to offer a handshake, a nod, a heartfelt word of thanks. "Thank you, Jed," a woman whispered, her voice thick with gratitude. "You brought us more than food. You brought us hope." A young boy, Jed, had shown how to whittle a bird, held up his small creation, a silent offering of appreciation. Sarah stood at the front, her eyes shining. "We won't forget you, Jed," she said, her voice clear and strong. He saw the respect and genuine affection in their faces. It wasn't the kind of fame that echoed in saloons or tall tales, but a deeper, truer recognition of his quiet strength and selfless acts. This wave of gratitude was a warm feeling in his old heart, a comfort as deep and abiding as the hum of a perfectly balanced wheel. He nodded, a rare, soft smile on his lips, then climbed onto the driver's seat. And begin. The journey back to his wagon yard was a quiet one, different from the urgent outbound trip. The wagon, now empty of its precious cargo, still carried the echoes of the grateful voices of Harmony Creek. Jed drove steadily, the familiar creak of the wagon and the rhythmic clop of the mule's hooves filling the silence. His mind wasn't on the dangers they had faced, but on the faces of the children, the relieved sighs of the elders, and the newfound hope in Sarah's eyes. He passed the spots where they had faced the storm, the broken bridge, and the silent, watchful night. These moments were not fearsome memories, but quiet confirmations of his strength, his knowledge, and his courage. The custom wheel, still turning true and strong, was a constant reminder of the precise work of his hands and the quiet heroism that didn't need a grand stage. As his wagon finally rolled into his own dusty yard, the familiar smell of wood and metal welcomed him home. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across his tools. He stepped down, his old bones a little weary, but his spirit refreshed. He looked around his quiet domain, the forge waiting to be stoked, the wood neatly stacked. He knew that the frontier would always bring new challenges, new broken things, and new needs. And he, Jed, the wheelwright, would be ready. The quiet hum of his craft, the steady work of his hands, was his purpose, his life, and his silent contribution to the wild, growing world around him. And